Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the Tiny House Summit. Our guests this hour are David and Jeanie Stiles. Welcome.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Steve.
For being here.
Inviting us to be.
I know you're super busy. I feel so privileged that you were able to do this.
We do have a book coming out any minute, so it's down to the stress time on. It's actually on building small, so it's a very appropriate time to do this.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves, and then we have a little code for me moving the slides around, and then we'll come back at the end.
Great.
I'm Jeanie Stiles. This is David Stiles, and we are married, and we're also designers and builders and authors.
Basically, we're a design team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say? Yeah.
And we specialize in small structures, small houses, and beginning with David's very early background, his very early interest in small houses, and tell them how you got started.
Well, a lot of people ask me this. How did you get started in building tiny houses and tree houses and things like that? It actually started back when I was a kid, and I grew up playing in the backyard. We lived near a reservation where it was miles and miles of woods. And me and my friends would build huts, huts in the ground. Sometimes they were in the caves. Sometimes they were in the trees. And I built a clubhouse, or at least I tried to. And this was what sort of almost stopped me. I built the clubhouse out using 2x2 sticks. And my brother came up after I was failing and said, "Look, you fool, you don't know how to do this at all. Your joint doesn't match, and you haven't planned this out at all." And I almost broke into tears. He was so right. But since then, I went to a camp where they taught carpentry and learned a bit more about carpentry, and actually taught it there eventually. And then kept trying and building huts in the woods, and finally
Tree houses,
and then I married this beautiful woman here, and we lived in Manhattan, and wanted to build a place. I wanted to move out on the weekends to some other place, so we went out to the end of Long Island looking for places to perhaps buy a piece of property. And
you want to show the first slide, and we'll
yeah,
show.
Yeah, you can show the first slide.
This is our first experience, actually. This is not a tiny house, but it's a fairly small barn. And what it enabled us to do was to buy a shell for $1,500, move it to this property, and then have a lot of experience, hands-on experience, figuring out how you do build something, how you improve something, all the building techniques from shingling to just building our own furniture, the walls, the ceilings, the floor. So you could say this was our experience in really learning. And from here now, we still build a lot of our projects for our books based in this barn.
Yeah, we have a workshop over on the right, which you can't see. Like Jeanie said, we build most of the stuff there. In
the barn and in the workshop. So before let's see, maybe we could show the next slide, and then we'll go back to us. So this was our next experience with building, and we actually, this shows you how we took a small footprint, and with the idea of building a bigger house later. I mean, I think we should point out that one way that we're different from probably a lot of the other presenters is we don't specialize so much in tiny houses on trailers with wheels, but more in houses that aren't necessarily moved, but could give you some flexibility at the same time.
Almost like more permanent, but not totally. Sometimes they can be moved.
I mean, our goal with this, we call this our sauna house, and it's built on a little lake, and it's more of a freestanding house. What we did was we built this so that we could eventually build a bigger house on this property, which we were lucky enough to find. And by doing that, and this is something we suggest and advise other people to do, if you're starting out with a small house, you don't have to put a lot of money out. You don't have to get a mortgage. It doesn't tie you down, and it sort of makes you streamline your life while you're living in it and working from there. It enables you to see where the sun rises, where the sun sets, what your view is, what the sounds are, the birds are. And, you know, that way build a bigger house on that property, you really have a heads up. You might even find out, as we did, that you don't want to build a bigger house. You want to stay in the tiny house because it's all you need, or at least wait until you have a bigger family or more money, or, you know, whatever, wherever your life takes you. So
this house, by the way, is 12 by 12. It's insulated because it was going to be a sauna, and it had a wood burning stove. You can see the pipe coming out of the ceiling and all that. And it had a bed with a fold-out bed so that two people could sleep in it, and then it folded back into a couch and fold down a writing or eating table. And it was all you needed on a weekend. We'd go up there in the middle of winter and go skiing. You can see the pond on the left, and we go ice skating. Then we'd come in, have a hot chocolate, and stay overnight even. And it was just perfect for a weekend cabin.
Also, we tried to think about a train or a boat, you know, when designing the inside of it, so that everything flipped down, you know, would be up against the walls. And this is something you can really utilize in any tiny house. And I'm sure a lot of tiny house builders and designers have done this. Think about how things can disappear or give you more floor space. And then only when you need them, say when you're having your dinner, your little table flips down. And it worked really very well for us. Same with the bed, the table, all that. So those are just some tips that we can give people. So let's see, should we go to the next slide?
Yep.
See what we have next here. Okay, so.
Well, there's a story behind this, shall we tell the story? Or?
Maybe we should introduce this by saying we also try and let people know, our readers and people that we work with, that there's a lot of different techniques that you can use when you're building tiny or small. And one of them that we discovered is timber framing, which is something that even though you can build any size structure, you're using very simple techniques and joints that you may have learned when you were in shop, when you were 8 years old, but you're utilizing those for a larger end product.
Yeah, since we lived in a timber frame barn, we were used to looking at timber framing. We always thought, wow, wouldn't it be neat to make our own timber frame tiny barn? And so we wrote books, of course, about this, and one of our readers called us up and said, I'm sort of involved in a Amish community upstate, and they would like you to come up and maybe do a design that they could copy and use and sell their sheds. This was about larger than a shed, and so we said, great. We went up there and we met all these Amish people. They're very hospitable, even though they are known to be kind of a closed community for their own survival. And they're just as kind as could be. Even gave us a chance to ride on their horses, and we could see that when we were talking to them, there was a team of horses, and the Amish people were loading the team up with lumber to do a barn raising the next day. And it was just like that. What was the movie with
Witness,
yeah. Where it just was like we went back exciting. 200 years into the past.
Let's show the next slide in this. There's a picture of one of their horses with the carriage, and you can see they put this little structure up. But the day after this, they were actually doing a larger barn framing, raising. And we've actually built three. We've had three of these in timber framing. We call them events or parties, and it's something that, what we're saying is anybody, even a novice, can build a tiny house. And we're trying to empower people, give them some inspiration and let them know that they can do this. So let's see another slide here. We can, at one of our this is one of our timber frames. So we did this with people that we invited who lived in Amagansett, and it was open to the public. They brought their kids. There's a couple more slides here we could show.
This was a barn raising.
Yeah, it's like a barn raising, but it was a small, tiny house.
All volunteers.
There's myself there, busy at work with one of these great wooden hammers. And the next slide is we had kids. I mean, it was really a great event, and something, of course, that you can do in one day. So then you spend the rest of your time filling in this house any way you want. But it's a great way to get started and invite your friends and your family, and it's definitely something anybody can do.
Should point out that we're not just about timber framing. We also think most small houses will be built with using 2x4s.
Mm-hmm. Let's see this finished project here. The next two pictures, we're going to see an interior. See another slide here. We're not seeing a slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is one of the larger, I think it was 13 by 14.
Yeah.
And we designed this for someone. It's a timber frame structure. He calls it his micro barn, but you can call it whatever you want. But this is the sleeping loft. He made handmade circular stairs out of wood that are really, I should have had a picture of those for you, that go up to this beautiful sleeping loft with a view out into the woods. And let's go to the next slide to see the final picture from the timber frame. There it is finished, and you can see how livable that is, boy.
But here again, we did the timber framing and helped him set up the timber frame, and then he did the rest.
He did everything else himself.
He's just a regular guy.
This is not
much experience, and he did have a few tools to do it with, and he just went ahead and did it.
Of course, he got us to help him put it up by having a big dinner party.
Yeah. He was a great cook, too.
Yeah, he's a very good cook. So, hoping everyone would help, but of course it ended up there were just about 4 of us who did it, but we had a good time, and got it all. He's still working on it. He's going to add on. He's going to have a little side, and that's the other thing about tiny houses. You think about them as something that's evolving. You can add on to them. You can, you can change them. You can go back to us now. We'll talk to you a little bit about that and show us. So anyway, we're not just into timber framing. We encourage people to try whatever techniques they're interested in. You could do some of these designs with, now we're not showing on the screen, but maybe that's okay. 2x4s, or tell them some of the different construction methods they could use, David.
In our books, we try and come up with a lot of different, back in the 70s, they had a insurgence, a movement about building owner-built houses, and they had a lot of great ideas that people have more or less forgotten until now. And like using earth-sheltered houses, and where you bank up the earth against the side of the house so you can have insulation, and it reduces your costs on heating and cooling. So they're cool, and they in the summer, and they're warm in the winter. It's a great idea. In fact, it's maybe one of the oldest ideas. Probably cavemen did that because they realized the value of the earth as a building material. And then there's other ideas we promoted, and that it was things like yurts, or things like tiny houses that are built on the water on rafts, and tiny houses that are portable, and you put them on a trailer, and they just take them from place to place. And
I think that's one thing we really tried to stress is the flexibility in building small. The freedom that it gives you, you don't have to go out and get a mortgage, you don't have to have a lot of money, and of course you're forced to streamline your life, to simplify your life, to really think about what is meaningful for you, what's necessary for you to live, and it gives you a real sense of freedom and empowerment. And if you're doing it yourself, you get a lot of satisfaction out of it. So we've done a lot of designing and building, and it's a very gratifying, rewarding thing to do. So, and it doesn't mean you have to stay in a tiny house either. I mean, you may use it as a vehicle to expand, to get something a little bigger or to add on to it. But it gives you some time to live somewhere without being burdened with a lot of debt. And we found it to be very useful and a very good way of living. You know, very, very advise it highly. Let's see what our next slide is here.
So you are showing on my screen, so hopefully that'll come through in the recording. I'll pull up the next slide for you.
Okay. All right. There we go. Here we have another example of a small house we did that was timber framed that has a sleeping loft in it. And this could be built using 2x4s or timber framing. Right. And we used stucco for the outside just to make it look like a little Tudor cottage. The woman who bought this from us actually uses it as her writing cottage. So, you know, you're using plywood, and you could use plywood and 2x4s, and you know, there's so many different techniques you could use, but you could get this same look of this little Tudor shed. She loves it. She says the minute she goes in it, you know, she's inspired to write. And a funny story is how we moved it to her, which, you know, we are designing portable things, but they can be difficult. This little house is heavy, and it was a very, I made a little video of it, but it was some experience moving it into the woods where she wanted it. We took down a couple of lines on the way, and, you know, I would say everything ended up great, but it was something, you know, an incredible memory for us. These great guys moved it who put up and take down TV sets, so they're used to anything. So anyway, now it's safely in Francesca's woods, and she's writing wonderful things from it. So let's see, the next.
This one is a tiny house that we built for our neighbor. It's actually happened that right before we started to build it, there was a huge storm where a lot of trees fell down, and turns out locust trees. Right? Yeah. Locust trees have a very poor root system, so there's a lot of down trees. So we chopped up the locust logs into 6-inch long logs and made this cordwood house. And it's nice because you're using materials that are found they're sustainable. It's there is, of course, some beams there that we have, and of course the ceiling and so forth. But it had a brick floor, and it was just everybody who looked at it said, "Wow, it just looked like a child's house almost." And
then the cordwood is held together, sealed with a mixture of sand, sawdust, and cement.
Right, a little lime too.
You know, it's a lot of fun making it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a nice size, and you know, just for a little cottage, and we've had a lot of people make this size. So let's see. But the next slide is of, we've got some close-ups.
Yeah.
Of techniques, going back to how I said it was very simple doing some of these, back to the timber framing. These are things people learned when they were little, some of them, and we've got this close up and the one next to it, you know, just, you can show the next slide. Yeah, there's shows your framing. The
mortise and tenon joint.
Mortise and tenon.
And believe me, it's a lot of work, but once you get it down and you shave off just a little bit, like a paper thin sheet of wood each time, and you test the post to see if it fits. You test it and shave it, and you test it. Then at that magic moment, suddenly the whole thing slides together. It's one of the most wonderful feelings you can experience as a carpenter.
Yeah, do you want to show us for a second? Well, back to us. So that, along with, I was just thinking about the fact that going back to our encouraging people to believe in themselves. that they can trust themselves, they can build it themselves, even as a beginner. I wanted to mention how we will have written 25 books this spring, and we get a lot of emails from people who've never built anything before. And I just remember this one letter that we got from these two women who were building a tiny house, and they ordered a table saw. They'd never built anything before, and they had it in the box from Sears. They had it there for 3 months, and they were afraid to open the box.
Yeah.
So finally, they opened the box. We kept saying, "Open the box, open the box. You can do it. You can do it." And they opened it, and they started in. They had some plans that they'd gotten from us, and they built this absolutely beautiful little. They were so proud of.
You would think a professional had.
It's just had everything. Little porch.
Windows.
And, perfect. They were using it as a guest house, but anybody could have lived in it. So, I have to say they were really our inspiration. So that's just one example. A lot of single women who've never built anything before, really successful experiences. So I think you just have to have confidence in yourself, and even as a beginner, know that you can do it. So
I'd like to point out too that a lot of people wonder how we do it with a husband and wife. Are we arguing with each other? No, we're not. Actually, works out that I'm doing the designing and the illustrating, and Jeanie is doing the writing. She has a background. She's a daughter of a lawyer, and she has a background at Wheaton College in English, and I have a background at industrial design in Pratt Institute. So the combination of a picture and an explanation in writing is what does it. It makes it. The most important thing about doing these projects is to really know what you're going to do in the next step. Having that kind of confidence that, I know what to do. It's not, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what you're going to do when you read these plans, and you know what's going to happen. So that's an important part of the whole project.
So let's see the next slide. I think we have some slides actually coming up of other construction methods. Yeah, and just to show you, a tiny house doesn't have to be, a trailer on wheels. It could be built on a hilltop, a hillside like this. This has a sleeping loft. It's got plenty of room inside and ventilation, and is very accessible. Also, a lot of people that we've designed tiny houses and small houses for have started out using them for one thing, and then later they're using them for something else. Maybe they've lived in it for a couple of years, and then they build another house somewhere. They use it as an Airbnb or as a studio, a workshop, like Francesca, as a writing space. Or a children's playhouse even, would be a glorified children's playhouse, but still. So let's see the next one. I think this is another example. This also has a sleeping loft in it.
This is important because we call it an eco house because it doesn't look this way, but it's 10 by 12, right? And it has the capability of having a wood-burning stove in it, and it has a sleeping bed in it. It has a little kitchen, and it has a loft. So it could well suit any. It could be a Airbnb. It could be a guest house. It could be a pool house.
Your house. Yeah,
it could be a guest house for overload of guests. I mean, it has so many different possibilities. I think we have a picture of it.
Yeah.
Of the interior. Could you go?
Well, we have some drawings coming up showing different ways you could outfit the inside.
There's the bed on the left side, and there's the kitchen on the right side, and the wood-burning stove, and there's a table if you can see it in the foreground, and closet, and of course there's storage underneath the bed. Everywhere you can, you put in some. Even has a composting toilet you can't see. It's cleverly covered up, so but it's there. If you ever need to use it.
See another slide here.
That's the eco.
Yeah.
Now this one is the same space, only it's used as an artist studio. So you can see there's plenty of room for even pretty large paintings. And has the artist's cabaret there, and it's work table over on the left with all those tubes and so forth.
Let's see the next one. I think we've got 3 examples.
Yeah.
There's the.
Now this is really important. This is a office,
home office,
home
or
office,
cottage. You could live and work here. But, I wanted to say one thing about home offices now, or tiny houses used as an office. I mean, they have really changed the way people work today. And you don't have to commute to work, with computers and with designs for tiny houses. You have a lot more versatility. You can use something like this as a home office and then adapt it or repurpose it later on. So our whole concept is that a tiny house can evolve, it can change, it can be made bigger, it can be repurposed, adapted, and it can change your life. Really.
We have people written to us from England. And that's a very big thing in England because, as you probably know, that a lot of English houses have a little shed in the back for gardening, and they've a lot of people have turned these sheds into a home office. And what it does is that it relieves them from going to work, because nowadays a lot of business, as you know, as we're working right now, and they can go to the bank or do any errands they want during the day. They don't have to drive and pollute the area with gas, and they don't have to spend anything on
because a lot of it is about the footprint. We're trying to decrease the carbon footprint. We're trying to respect the future of our environment for our children, and a lot of that is a result of how big or how small we build. So I think downsizing is a very important thing. We do want to help the environment as much as we can today. So can we see the next slide? This is the granny house. So this is obviously in the Southwest in New Mexico and Santa Fe. And it's too bad I don't have a large picture of this. It's actually a very small, compact house, but perfect. And it's a perfect granny house. It's a perfect little house for anybody. They've made this with 1.5 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a living area, and then one of the features that you can do onto anything you build is a great screened-in porch. In this case, it was screened in and then she glassed it in, so it was year-round, because they do have pretty tough winters in Santa Fe. And it was very, so much sun pouring in, utilizing things like skylights, and, having a view from every room is something that makes a tiny house feel bigger. Skylights and windows are something we really we advise for any tiny house. And porches.
This looks like it's made out of adobe, but actually it's made of cement blocks and parged over.
Yeah,
the adobe type skin coat.
So I think we've got one more slide. Oh no, maybe we have 2. So that's another technique, log cabins. They can be as big or as small as you want. It's another building technique.
This is nice because it uses a sustainable material, logs, which they might even find on the property, depending on where you are.
Yeah. And then we've got one more, I think, of the sugar cubes. This is a concept David's working on, which is very interesting and goes along with our idea of having cubes and adding onto them as your family grows, as your money grows, as your needs might grow. Not that it ends up being even that big, but you start out with one and then you add on. Right?
What inspired us was that you start out, perhaps you're just graduated from college, and typically you have a huge college loan you have to pay off, and you don't have much money. And something like 1/3 of college graduates live at home with their parents, which is not that great for the parents or for them, because every graduating student wants to be on their own and doing something. So an alternative is to take one of these cubes, which is 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet, and with the parents' permission, of course, build one of these in the backyard. And actually could be done with very little money and with very little experience in to build it. And what it would take is they'd run a hose to the back for bathing water, and they would also use propane gas for heating and propane gas for even for lighting, or you could have an electric line go out there easily from the parents' house and have it lit up and use electric heaters and that sort of thing. But it would be a way to start. It's just like better than a tent, much, much, much better. When you think of it, prisoners in prison live in a much smaller space than this, and millionaires who have yachts live in a space smaller than this. So it's not that bad. But the important thing is that if this person got a better job and wanted to move out, you could unbolt it. It all comes apart
and switch to us
in different slabs, and it can be put on a truck and moved to any spot where they want, and then put together. And then as it goes on, that one cube serves just as the kitchen. Another cube is added. That would be the bedroom, and then a third cube is added, which is the bathroom. In between that would be a louvered space where they can eat outside and entertain guests. Yeah. So it looks like a real house. I mean, a lot of the problems with the tiny houses that are on wheels, they look, well, you're restricted to that size.
Yeah, there's just more flexibility.
This looks like a real house, a real contemporary house too.
So it's just another way of doing something which we're promoting, which is to streamline your lives, pare down your possessions, help the environment, reduce the carbon footprint, downsize, and trust yourself. You can do it. You can build your own structure yourself. I mean, have confidence. So, that's basically what we're about. We're about giving you confidence, liberating you, and enabling you. And hopefully you'll take that advice and go with it.
So someone's interested in tiny houses and they love your presentation. Which book do they go buy?
Well,
I would guess cabins.
I guess cabins. But I think our next book is coming out this spring, is called Building Small.
Yeah.
That's going to have a lot of ideas for building small, and also it's going to have a whole section on experiences people have had, which would be very interesting too. And a wide range of experiences. So, I think that's going to be maybe the most helpful book that we've done. We did another one, Backyard Building, which was the one that's more recent than cabins, and it's got everything from tree houses to, little tiny houses. It's got a wide range of stuff, because we've done a lot of tree houses too, and you can live in a tree house if you want. So we're all about anything that's tiny.
So I've been going to these tiny house festivals, and they're getting 50 or 60,000 people. Does this surprise you?
No, I think more. Oh my God, people have to downsize now. I mean, there's only so much land left. There's only so much money you can earn. I mean, I think it's, and also people, as David said, they come out of school with these gigantic loans to pay off. I mean, there has to be an alternative way of living until they can get out of debt. It's another very important factor.
Yeah, nothing but the highest respect for anybody who tries this and is willing to downsize and live in a minimal way. And everything they do then would be not hidden, but clear to them. And they would see their environment and they live in it and know where their socks are, know where everything is. Nothing would be hidden away. In a tiny house, you have it all under control. I think that would be wonderful.
So for much of history and in much of the world, what we're calling tiny or small living is actually kind of normal living, right?
That's totally right.
Yeah.
And, when you think about it, I mean, our country is just an example of, huge consumption of products and gigantic houses, and there's so many countries where that would never exist, and people are, of course, perfectly happy living, you know, in tiny little circumstances sometimes, and making a go of it and being happy about it. So that's so true.
So somebody's watching this video and you say, you can do it, go ahead. And they say, well, I'm really not sure I can do it. What do you say to them?
Read our book.
Yeah, right.
Because really,
we start you at the beginning.
We work, we make it as clear as possible.
Yeah.
Like I said before, they'll know what the next step is, and they'll feel confident in it.
I mean, this is not about promoting our books, but one thing that is good if you want to start out and you're reading probably other books too, but in our books is they're hand-drawn illustrations that are really showing you details of how to do something and encouraging you and, you know, trying to empower you so you can do it yourself.
From the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain.
Yeah, that's
covered.
And have confidence. Do it.
Well, you two are delightful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Nice to see you.
I think we're done. I'm going to turn off the recording. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.